3 lives, 3 worlds, Lotus steps. Wherever step goes, Lotus blooms. Divine prayer. Lotus Step Chapter 19, Book 2. Qingyu sat on the bed for a long time holding his head with a hangover and headache without remembering what happened last night. It was obvious that she was drunk, but she had no idea why she was so drunk. But she had always been like this. She always broke into pieces when she was drunk, so that was fine. After breakfast, she habitually went to the general's mansion. When she left, she remembered Tianbu's message yesterday, so she turned back and wandered around the backyard with nothing to do, picked up a bunch of small stones, and squatted next to a small lake. I was floating small stones in the water while thinking about my thoughts. Not long after throwing it away, Li Xiang came to report that the emperor suddenly announced her entry into the palace. Eunuch Shin's clever apprentice Xiao Yuzi was already waiting in the small flower hall. Emperor Changyan of the Dashi dynasty was an emperor who had little brother-sister love. This can be seen from his definition of the relationship between siblings. It is better to miss each other than to meet each other, which is his positioning of the relationship between himself and his 100 biological sisters. Since Chengyu does not need Chengyun to prepare a dowry when she gets married, his resistance to her is not that strong, and he can still call her to see him from time to time. At 2 o'clock in the morning, Chengyu entered the palace, and at the beginning of the hour, he returned to Shihua Tower with a sad look on his face. Cheng'en gave her a set of pens and a piano. The pen is white jade and purple wolf hair. Shaoxi produces ink stones and Shiqi produces brushes. It is said that this set of white jade and purple wolf hair embodies the lifelong efforts of the old owner of Shiqi Brush Shop. The piano is made of cypress on the mountain. There are cypresses on the ridges and streams in the rocks. You can't hear the sound of the mountains and stir up the flying springs. This poem talks about the 4 famous harps in the world, and as the poem says, the cypress on the mountain ranks first among the 4 famous harps. When Chengyun gave her these 2 priceless things, Chengyu had an ominous premonition. Sure enough, along with these 2 things, Cheng'en also arranged for her to be a painter and a violinist as her masters, teaching her how to play the piano and paint. At the same time, he also appointed a female ceremony officer to reinforce her etiquette. What Chengyun meant was that in the past, because he had no time, he neglected to discipline her and let her do whatever she wanted every day. Seeing that she had grown up, and when she reached the age where she wanted to get married, she had to be able to play piano, chess, calligraphy, and painting. So first, getting married would not dishonor the royal dignity. By giving her a good pen and a good piano, I also hope that the aura of these 2 spiritual objects can be infected by her, so that she can learn as soon as possible under the guidance of her masters. Once she heard that the 2 masters and the ritual officer would come to Shiwalu every day to supervise her, Chengyu was heartbroken on the spot. She didn't understand at all why an emperor like Chengyun, who had so many things to do and didn't even have time to ask for another wife after she died, had time to care about her virtues and merits. Since he is so free, why not go find a wife first, right? Chengyu is very confused. And she also felt that what the emperor said was unreasonable, because even if she wanted to get married, according to the fate deduced by the old Taoist, it would probably be a marriage. When the bride and groom went to the border area, everyone was drinking heavily and eating meat. When people drank, they didn't drink from cups but from bowls. They didn't even know that there was such a thing as elegance in the world. It didn't matter how good she was at piano, chess, calligraphy, and painting. It's better to learn a morin fiddle, so that at least she can still be useful when everyone dances around the campfire. She shared this opinion with the emperor on the spot. Chengyun stared at her for a moment and rubbed his forehead. Then the piano painting will be the same as before, and a morinukin will be added. For the first time in his life, Chengyu felt that he was really smart but was misled by his cleverness. After the emperor's decree, the most painful person in Shiwalu was Chengyu, the happiest person was Zhu Hibiscus, and the one in between was Yao Huang. Zhu Jin felt that the piano and painting etiquette class was scheduled for Chengyu in such a way that she would not have time to cause trouble outside. It really saved him trouble, so he was happy. Yao Huang is a close friend of Zhu Jin, so he is happy for Zhu Jin, but at the same time, he is keenly aware that if Qingyu doesn't have time to go out and wander around, then he won't have time to take him to Linling Pavilion to find Hua Feiwu. So he feels painful for himself. The next few days, for Qingyu, were a battle of wits and courage with 3 piano painting teachers and an instrument officer. The ceremonial officer withdrew on the second day because there was actually no problem with Qingyu's etiquette. The problem was that she could be a model when she wanted to be polite, but she was a disaster when she didn't want to be polite. After careful consideration, the etiquette officer felt that this was not an etiquette issue, but a mental health issue that should be under the control of the Thai hospital. Of course, as an etiquette person, she couldn't help. The Guqin master lasted 1 day longer than the ceremonial officer. The Guqin master was very affectionate and wanted to teach Qingyu well at first. However, he had a sincere heart to educate, but it was difficult for him to match the magic sound that filled Qingyu's ears. That's okay, he tried to endure it and it was not unbearable, but Qingyu actually used his goddess, the first of the 4 famous harps in the world, and the Lingshangbai, who had only played elegant music since the day he was born. To play the brothel Yanchuer, the master collapsed, vomited 3 liters of blood on the spot, fell ill and ran away. The Moronukan master and the painting master were not as passionate as the Guqin master, and the most important thing was that they did not have any goddesses, so they were lucky enough to persevere. Fortunately, 2 masters were out. Apart from attending classes every day, Qingyu could still find some free time to go out and have some fun. Every day in class, she felt that the sky was going to kill her. When she went out for a walk, she felt that she might not die for a while, so she didn't make much effort to resist and passed the days in a daze. In these days, Qingyu met Lian San once. It's at Huaimao Villa. Huaimao Villa is a house in the west of the city owned by Qingyu's aunt, the eldest princess. The eldest princess has no children, but she is very lively. Therefore, every autumn, a cultural and military gathering is held at Huaimao Villa, where the noble boys and girls gather. When we get together to compete in literary and martial arts competitions, the winner will always be rewarded with treasures. According to Qingyu herself, because she was a determined princess, she never participated in the eldest princess's civil and military meeting when she was most short of money. But according to Li Xiang's understanding of her, he thinks this is because private pawn shops dare not accept the royal treasures given by the eldest princess, and it is not easy to realize them. However, I heard that this year the eldest princess is planning to award the calligraphy masterpiece for Poems of Zui Tan by the former talent Shen Yanji as a prize to the winner of Shilu. The advantage of for Poems of Zui Tan is that it is not considered a royal treasure and can be easily therefore. This year everyone was honored to see Qingyu in the willow shooting competition at Huaimao Villa. Shooting willows is better than writing and shooting. Generally speaking, you need to find a large place, insert a row of willow branches on the field, peel off the upper bark of the willow branches with a sharp knife to expose the white part, and use the exposed white area as the target. Then list out a row of 10 people 100 feet away and wait for the gong to sound. Riding on a horse, he shoots willows with arrows. The one who can break the willow branches and catch the broken willows with his hand is the winner. From the moment she led her horse to the starting line, Qingyu felt someone staring at her. She was good-looking, and people would peek at her wherever she went. She had long been accustomed to people looking at her. In addition, there were 10 contestants in the field today, but there were only 3 girls including her, so it was inevitable that people would look at her. But she vaguely felt that the gaze focused on her that made her feel something was not from the crowd of onlookers, because she did not notice the curiosity and inquiry. But it could be said that the sight was an hallucination caused by her nervousness. She might have been nervous when she knew that the boys who were really good at riding and shooting had already joined the 3 armies and 4 guards, and the contestants on the field were all half-baked. She asked herself that it was impossible. So, who is looking at her? This question was answered when she hit the gong, galloped on her horse, drew her bow and shot arrows, and leaned down to fish out the broken willow tree with a neat technique. After completely relaxing, Chengyu glanced at the high platform in front of him and saw Liansong. This is something unexpected, because on the high viewing platform, it stands to reason that the person sitting at this moment should be the eldest princess. After hastily throwing the broken willow to the eunuch holding the gong at the end, Chengyu looked at the stage again and found that it was indeed Liansong. Just now she took a quick glance and didn't see Princess Yanlan sitting next to him. When she raised her eyes, she saw Yanlan in a white dress leaning forward to talk to Liansong. Liansong tilted his head slightly and was listening to her. Chengyu could only see his profile. The black folding fan in his hand was lazily placed on the armrest of the seat, a little carelessly. That was the Liansong she was familiar with. Her eyes were fixed on him for a long time, but he didn't look at her. She also suspected that the gaze just now might not come from him. Chengyu pursed her lips and lowered her head. Only then did she hear the cheers from the crowd, and then she was suddenly pulled by someone. She turned around and saw Miss Chi smiling at her with her hands folded. It was a surprise to see Miss Chi. She temporarily put her unhappiness behind her, and when she got off her horse, Miss Chi gave her a big hug. The cheers lasted for a long time. The crowd looked at Chengyu with admiration. Chengyu was a little confused for a moment. Miss Chi, who hangs out here every year, excitedly explained to her that the willow shooting competition has been at an appalling level since its inception. In one competition, 1 or 2 contestants can accurately shoot arrows into the willow branches and win. It's not any other place, it's already very good. The crowd didn't have much hope, but this time Chengyu was able to handle the 3 procedures of shooting willows, breaking willows, and picking willows in one go, so everyone went crazy. How unbearable this competition was in the past can be seen from the performance of the other 9 contestants this time. 2 of them shot the willow branch, but unfortunately they hit someone else's willow branch. 3 of them missed the shot. They didn't even shoot at other people's willow branches. There were 2 horses who had already run past the willow branches, but the bows in their hands were not picked up yet. But Miss Chi thought that these 7 were not the worst, because they were better than others. Starting from the last 2 heroes who shot arrows directly into the audience, they at least achieved the second safest and first place in the game. It was rare for Miss Chi to say such a long speech. She couldn't help but feel thirsty. She took out an orange from her arms. She found that Chengyu was also very thirsty, so she handed the orange to Chengyu and said that she would go to the front yard to pick 2 more. Let her wait where she is. Chengyu watched Miss Chi leave and saw the onlookers disperse to other competition venues in 2s and 3s. She hesitated for a moment and quickly glanced at the high platform again. Unfortunately, nothing could be seen clearly. Then she remembered that Liansong had ignored her for a long time. He didn't pay much attention to her, but she still missed him so much. She felt useless and was a little angry with herself for a moment, so she tried hard to control herself and not raise her head. I just peeled the oranges. The accident happened at this time. A frightened horse suddenly rushed out of the arena, knocking over several onlookers who had not yet had time to leave. Like an arrow from a string, it neighed and rushed towards where Chengyu was standing. Chengyu's first reaction was to quickly step aside, but she forgot that the reins of Bian Peach Blossom were wrapped around her hands. She had unintentionally wrapped the reins around her hands several times when she was thinking about something, and of course she couldn't escape at the critical moment. The blue-eyed Peach Blossom was frightened by the crazy horse that was about to rush over. She neighed and immediately ran away. Before Chengyu could react, she tripped to the ground and was dragged out by the running blue-eyed Peach Blossom. His body brushed hard against the sand, and someone behind him seemed to be shouting, "Ayu," but no matter how much more he heard, he couldn't hear it. His bulging temples seemed to have been equipped with 2 giant drums, blocking all sounds from the outside world. Outside, only the thunderous sound of drums rumbled in my mind. Blue-eyed Peach Blossom is the treasure pony that Jew Hibiscus found for her. She has the nickname Chasing the Wind for 1,000 miles, and running away is no joke. Chengyu was only confused for a moment and immediately realized that she had to save herself quickly, otherwise she would have to deal with it sooner or later. At this moment, a cold light suddenly flashed before her eyes. The reins were broken into two pieces, and the force pulling her suddenly disappeared. Qingyu rolled twice on the ground, and she still felt dizzy when someone held her shoulders. She pressed her temple, which was throbbing with pain, and heard the man ask her, "How are you doing? Are you injured?" She instinctively wanted to thank people, but she realized her voice was hoarse as she spoke. The man held her hand. She hissed, and he quickly let her go. "Does it hurt?" Changyu blinked her eyes, and then her blurred vision stabilized, and she finally saw her benefactor kneeling next to her with a worried look on his face. It turned out to be Ji Mingfeng. She was surprised that Prince Ji was here, but when she thought about the reputation of the eldest princess's civil and military association, it was not surprising that Prince Ji came to see her. Only then did she realize that she felt pain, and her whole body was burning. When Prince Ji picked her up with a white face, she shivered in pain. Prince Ji's whole body froze, and there was actually a trace of incompetence in his voice. "Hyo, be patient. I'll take you to the imperial doctor," and coaxed her. "The imperial doctor is waiting in the yard next door. The imperial doctor will stop the pain." After seeing her, Changyu was confused for a moment by Prince Ji's reaction. She felt that if the cold-faced prince, who was used to seeing life and death, could be so moved, it might be because she was about to die. But at this time, apart from the pain all over her body, she didn't even vomit blood, so she probably wouldn't die. She calmed down secretly, endured the pain, and comforted Prince Ji. It doesn't. It hurts a lot. You walk slower. You are shaking. When you go to the inner courtyard to find the imperial doctor, you must pass by the high viewing platform in front of the Shilu Stadium. Qingyu herself didn't understand why she glanced at the high platform again when Prince Ji held her in his arms and passed by it. Nor did she think about what she was expecting or what she hoped to see. She just couldn't help it. In his shaky vision, Liansong was still on the high platform, but he didn't seem to notice the commotion caused by Peach Blossom dragging her just now. He had already stood up from his seat, his right hand holding the fan resting on the side of Yanlan's wheelchair, and his left hand holding the back of the mahogany wheelchair, as if to push Yanlan away. Yanlan turned slightly and looked up at him. She didn't know whether she was talking to him or something. He didn't lean down, so he looked at a distance from Yanlan, but his eyes were lowered, probably looking at Yanlan. Both of them are dressed in white, and both are good-looking, so the scene is particularly beautiful. The huge golden willows on the side of the high platform are a scene worthy of painting, but such a peaceful and beautiful scene made Qingyu feel uncomfortable for a moment. At that moment she finally understood what she was actually looking forward to. She is looking forward to Liansong's care. Although she didn't think that her recent distress and subsequent injuries were a big deal, she also hoped that he would be nervous, and then she could comfort him like she comforted Ji Shizi. In fact, she didn't feel much pain, but he walked too fast. Terrified. Yes, she secretly hoped that it was not Prince Ji who saved her, but Liansong. And why she expected it like this, she couldn't explain clearly. In her heart, he should be like this. For a moment, her heart sank. Did he no longer like her or care about her? The relationship between people is so delicate. Sometimes one person will no longer like another person for no reason. In fact, she has known it for a long time. She just stubbornly believed that she and Lin San should be special and they should not be included in this category. But why shouldn't they be included? She had never thought about this problem before. Now that she thought about it, her conclusion was untenable. At this moment, she felt more confused than ever before. The white figure on the high platform was about to disappear from her eyes soon. Ji Mingfeng held her and turned around a rockery. In that last glance, she seemed to see Liansong finally looking up at her. But she soon realized that it was just her illusion. Because at such a long distance, he was just a white shadow to her, and it was actually impossible for her to see his movements. Maybe she wanted him to notice her so much that she imagined he noticed her. She's really useless. The wounds on her body hurt 100 times more in that instant, but she gritted her teeth and made no sound. She didn't want to make herself look even more useless. After that, Chengyu spent several days recovering from his injuries in the hospital bed. All her close friends came to Shiwalu to visit her. Even the imperial master, who had only had a brief experience with Mingxi, came to Shihua Tower to see her. But Liansong never came. Li Xiang said that he had been taking care of her at night recently and could hear her crying softly in her sleep every night. Changyu did not remember that she had cried in her dream. But Li Xiang would not lie to her. Li Xiang was worried about her, but there was nothing she could do to ease Li Xiang's worries because she didn't know the reason why she cried every night. The only thing she knew was that she had indeed been unhappy these days. How seemingly endless rain. Chengyu lay in bed for 4 days, and on the 5th day he was finally able to go to the ground. He was greeted by the eldest princess's reward, but it was not Shenyanji's for poems of drunken tan, but a set of tricks. It is said that Chengyu easily won the first place in the willow shooting competition, which had not been successful for several years, and made the royal family proud. The eldest princess was so happy that she felt that Shenyanji's calligraphy works were not worthy of her good results at all, so she had to rummage through the cabinets at home. A few days later, she found a set of peacock heads and masks given to her by Emperor Ruizong. The eldest princess deeply felt that only this set of treasures could express her appreciation for Chengyu. This set of hair is indeed luxurious, decorated with 7 treasures, and it is priceless at first glance. The problem is that according to Dashi's laws, only princesses and princesses can wear peacock ornaments. If you take it out for pawn, which pawn shop would dare to accept it? Chengyu was so angry that he almost lay back on the bed. What's even more terrible is that the eldest princess happily reported the matter to the emperor, hoping to seek another award for her. The eldest princess had good intentions, but what she didn't know was that these days were the days when the emperor detained Chengyu to learn painting and piano. Logically speaking, Chengyu should not have appeared in her civil and military gatherings. So it was natural that the emperor immediately knew that Chengyu had skipped class. There was no reward, but the imperial edict punishing her with 7 days of confinement was sent to Shiwalu as soon as she got out of bed. Chengyu almost fainted with anger. But Zhu Jin happily invited Yao Huang for a few drinks that night. Chengyu was used to being punished in confinement. The Matukan master and the painting master came to class as usual, and the class load was 3 times the usual amount of confinement. Chengyu had never experienced confinement before. 2 days passed and I felt physically and mentally tortured. Prince Ji and Miss Chi heard the news and came to visit her. Ji Shitzi is strategizing, has the world at heart, and is capable in major matters, but he has no experience in how to comfort a person who is tired of learning. After careful consideration, he can only advise her to be patient. On the other hand, although Miss Chi doesn't talk much at ordinary times, she can always solve her knot at critical moments. Miss Chi enlightened her like this. Do you think your 2 masters are happy when they see you every day? Of course not. In the past, they only needed to see you for an hour and a half every day, and they still had a lot of breathing space, but now that they are under the pressure of the emperor and have to stay with you every day, I think they are having a harder time than you. You only need to pay attention to the suffocated expression on the face of your Morinfure master when you play the piano, and you will understand. Seeing Chengyu raising the bow of the Morinchine threateningly, Miss Chi wisely shut her mouth. Oh, are you going to start playing the piano again? Then let's go. Chengyu later followed Miss Chi's suggestion and carefully observed her 2 masters and found that they were indeed in more pain than she was. She felt at peace thinking that she was not the one having the hardest time. The 7-day confinement therefore passed quickly. It was indeed fun to be friends with Prince Ji. After Chengyu came out of confinement, Prince Ji packed the entire Zaijiangding building to celebrate her. The breeze blew down, and when she passed out on the side of the railing, she saw 2 oil paper umbrellas in the light rain across the long street. The umbrella in front is very huge, but the one in the back is normal size. Both umbrellas are white with ink lotus paintings on them. She was not very good at painting, but she had 2 brushes to appreciate the paintings. She saw that the ink lotus on the umbrella was covered with rain and mist, as if it was blooming in the rain. It was a good painting, so she couldn't help but take a second look. The people holding the umbrellas walked into the curiosity room on the opposite side one after another. A section of purple skirt and half a wooden wheel were exposed under the eaves of the umbrella in front. Qingyu held half a mouthful of wine in his mouth and choked when he swallowed it. She covered her mouth and coughed twice. When she looked over again, she saw that the waiter had already stepped forward to take the 2 open paper umbrellas. There were 3 people under the umbrellas. Sure enough, they were Liansong, Yanlan, and Tianbu. They did not go inside. There was a shelf on the right side of the Gongzi shop, and there were many decorative masks on the shelf. Yanlan seemed to be interested in those masks. She pushed her wheelchair closer to the shelf. She took off a black mask from the shelf with her delicate hands, said something with a smile, and handed it to Liansong. Liansong took the mask, looked at it for a while, and then put it on his face. Qingyu stared at the scene in a daze. Liansong, who was wearing a mask, suddenly raised his head and looked over, and Qingyu quickly squatted down. She didn't know if he raised his head because he sensed her gaze. In the past, of course, she would have smiled and raised her hand to greet him, but this time, when she realized that he was raising his head, she instinctively chose to squat down and hide herself behind the railing. Through the gap between the handrails, she saw him tilting his head slightly and maintaining that movement for a while. Only then did she see clearly that the mask was a human face with an elegant outline, like a literary god enshrined in a temple, but it was painted black and molten silver was used to outline complex patterns on the face, which was strange and beautiful. Because it rained today, but the sky was getting dark at dusk, the waiter lit the lantern at the entrance of the store. The reddish light enveloped Liansong. His white clothes seemed to be dyed with bright colors. He stood wearing the mask. In the red soft light, he looked like a handsome, evil god. She wondered if he saw her. After a long time, he turned around and took off his mask. The shopkeeper of Gongzi quickly came out and led the 3 distinguished guests inside. The eaves soon blocked Liansong's face and then blocked his entire figure. She could only see the rain dripping down the black tiles in the red light of the lantern. Even the rain seems to be stained with red, like the tears falling on the face of a woman wearing red makeup with a subtle sadness. She felt a little cold. When Miss Qi found Qingyu, she found that she had climbed to the roof of Xiajiangding Tower and was sitting on the ridge of the roof, with her arms wrapped around her knees and her head buried in her knees, as if she was asleep. Qingyu has a lot of experience in climbing high when she is drunk, so Miss Qi is not surprised how she got to the top of the building. But the rain has not stopped since noon today. Even though it is just a drizzle, being exposed to it for a long time will be harmful to the body. Glancing at the few empty wine bottles at Qingyu's feet, it could be seen that she had been sitting here for a while. Miss Qi hurried over and explored her back collar and neck. She found that her clothes were wet and her whole body was cold. Her heart skipped a beat. With a pat, he held her back and carried her downstairs to find the doctor. Unexpectedly, she raised her head and raised her hand to block Miss Qi's movement. After blocking it, she realized that the person coming was Miss Qi, so she moved to the side as if she was happy, and her voice was also very cheerful. "Oh, it's you, Xiao Qi, you came just in time. Sit with me for a while." His hair on the temples was wet, but his face was flushed. He didn't know whether he was drunk or had a fever. Miss Qi raised her hand to her forehead and frowned. "You have a fever, let's go down first." But she didn't seem to hear Miss Qi's words, and said to herself, "You know, I finally remembered why I always cry in my dreams. It's nonsense." Miss Qi ignored her and only stretched out her hand to wipe her wet hair. She didn't mind and just continued, "Because I realized," her voice lowered, "maybe I have never been the unique person for Brother Liansan." After saying that, she pursed her lips and said, "I'm so sad." Miss Qi's movements paused. After a long time, Miss Qi said, "You like to make friends, but you have never thought about being unique to anyone." She was vague. "Yeah." She thought for a while and then said, "But Brother Liansan is not my friend, he is my brother." She was stunned for a moment at this point. "Oh no, actually he is not my brother either." The drizzle quickly wet her forehead. Miss G stretched out her hand to wipe the rain from her forehead, tried to lift her up again, and said something to distract her. Then what is he? She was lost in thought, and indeed she was much more docile. Miss G finally carried her on her back, and when she was about to fly downstairs, she heard her whisper in her ear, "He is a special person." Gently, like saying to yourself, "It's very special." After that, Miss G didn't hear Cheng Yu mention Lian Song again for more than half a month. But that doesn't mean that General Lian has just faded away from their lives. In fact, they met Lian Song twice in more than half a month. One time was at the entrance of Kilai building. Lian Song and Yen Lan were about to enter the building when Prince Ji led them down the stairs. After realizing Cheng Yu's dependence on Lian San, Miss Ji inquired about Lian San privately, so she also knew that Yen Lan was Lian San's cousin. I also heard that Lian San had always been kind to Yen Lan. Yen Lan had trouble with her legs and feet and had a melancholy and aloof temper. In the past, Lian San often took Yen Lan out of the palace to hang out when he had nothing to do. Miss Chi glanced at the pair of cousins in front of her, then looked back at Cheng Yu who had been walking beside her just now, but did not see her figure. Later, she found out that she had actually gone back upstairs and climbed down from the back of the second floor. This is avoiding Lian Song. Miss Chi still remembered that not long ago she went to the general's mansion to block Lian Song. She also said in drunken words that Lian San was special to her, so why did she suddenly start hiding from him? Miss Chi felt that this matter was a bit difficult to understand. Another time I met Lian Song alone in the Kangmi bistro buying cakes. The two of them were sitting in the bistro drinking tea. After watching for such a long time, Miss Chi felt that she had understood that there must be something going on between Cheng Yu and Lian San, and they lacked a chance to explain it to each other. She thought that this was a good opportunity for them to explain it to each other, so she decided Cheng Yu was about to go out to stop Lian San. As soon as she walked out of the door, she heard a stab behind her. She moved her hands lightly and looked back, only to find that Cheng Yu had actually used a knife to cut off half of the sleeve she was holding. She took 3 steps back and huddled in the corner with a very determined attitude. "Not now, I haven't thought about it yet." Miss Chi thought that she must not forget her original intention and take Cheng Yu out, otherwise she would not feel comfortable dragging Cheng Yu with this matter. However, she was also really curious and couldn't help holding the half sleeve and asked Cheng Yu, "What are you doing? What kind of tatters are these clothes? Cutting them to pieces so completely." Then Cheng Yu carefully put the dagger into the scabbard. "It's not the fault of the clothes." He inserted the dagger into his waist and patted it with his hand. "It's a good treasure given by the emperor's cousin. It's hard to find in 100 years. You can see that it is forged from fine iron, and it can be broken by blowing hair, and it can be whittled like clay." Miss Chi, who had just vowed not to forget her original intention just a moment ago, immediately forgot her original intention and leaned over. "Hey, show me." Then the two of them began to appreciate the dagger together for a whole afternoon before going home. Miss Ho-chi didn't even remember that she had forgotten to do something today. Of course, she didn't notice that Cheng Yu was actually a little absent-minded throughout the afternoon that day, but now Cheng Yu no longer put all her emotions on her face like she did when she was a child, or even a while ago, and she carefully concealed it. End of Lotus Step Chapter 19, Book 1. By Tangqi. English translated using Google.